Marcus Hartwell stood in the doorway of his daughter's bedroom, watching her rock back and forth in the corner, hands flapping rhythmically against her thighs. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows did nothing to warm the scene. His 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, hadn't looked at him in 3 years, hadn't spoken a word in her entire life. The doctors said she never would. The house around them, a 12-bedroom estate in Malibu with ocean views that people paid fortunes just to photograph, felt like a mausoleum. Beautiful, expensive, and dead inside. Marcus was 42, self-made, ruthless in business. He'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing, turned one patent into billions, appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Man Who Cured Pain." But he couldn't cure his own daughter, couldn't reach her, couldn't break through the invisible wall that separated her world from his. His wife, Vanessa, had left 18 months ago, packed her bags one Tuesday morning while Sophia screamed in her room, packed them methodically, tears running down her face, but hands steady. "I can't watch her disappear anymore," Vanessa had whispered, "and I can't watch you disappear trying to save her." She'd kissed Sophia's forehead. The girl didn't react and walked out the front door. Marcus hadn't fought it. How could he? He was already gone, buried in work, in research, in anything that let him pretend the brokenness at home didn't exist. Now it was just Marcus and Sophia, and an army of specialists who came and went, each one confident at first, defeated by the end. "Mr. Hartwell?" He turned. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, stood in the hallway, her face carefully neutral. She'd worked for him for 6 years, had watched Sophia's condition worsen, had cleaned up after 17 different behavioral therapists. "The new caregiver is here," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "Number 18. Marcus's jaw tightened. 18 caregivers in 3 years. Some lasted months, some lasted days. One lasted 45 minutes before Sophia's screaming sent her running to her car, crying apologies. "Send her up," he said. Mrs. Chen hesitated. "Sir, this one is different." "Different how?" "She's 73 years old." Marcus frowned. Every caregiver he'd hired had been young, energetic, armed with degrees in special education and behavioral psychology. 73. The agency said she specifically requested this position. She has no formal training in autism, no certifications. Mrs. Chen paused. "But she raised 6 children, including 2 with special needs, and she's been a housekeeper for 40 years. A housekeeper, not a specialist, not a therapist, a maid. Marcus should have said no immediately, should have called the agency and demanded they send someone qualified. But something in him, the part that was too exhausted to fight anymore, just nodded. "Fine, send her up." 5 minutes later, a small woman with silver hair, pulled into a neat bun, entered Sophia's room. She wore a simple gray dress, sensible shoes, and carried a worn canvas bag over one shoulder. Her face was weathered but kind, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, extending a hand. Her voice was soft but steady, with a faint accent Marcus couldn't quite place. "I'm Elena Ruiz." He shook her hand. "You understand what you're walking into here?" Elena's eyes moved past him to Sophia, still rocking in the corner, humming a tuneless sound that made Marcus's chest ache every time he heard it. "I understand she needs someone who won't give up on her," Elena said simply. Marcus studied her. No pity in her expression, no fear, just quiet determination. "She doesn't speak," he said. "She doesn't make eye contact. She doesn't respond to her name. She screams if you touch her unexpectedly. She throws things when routines change." The last caregiver tried to hug her, and Sophia bit her hard enough to draw blood. Elena nodded slowly. "What does she like?" The question caught him off guard. "What? What makes her happy? What calms her?" Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know. He'd been so focused on what was wrong with Sophia, on fixing her, that he'd forgotten to notice what brought her joy. "Music, maybe," he said finally. "Sometimes. She hums constantly. But we've tried music therapy. It didn't work." "Sometimes the trying is what doesn't work," Elena said quietly. "Sometimes children just need someone to sit with them in the quiet." Before Marcus could respond, Sophia's humming grew louder. Her hands flapped faster. She was escalating. Marcus recognized the signs. In 30 seconds, she'd be screaming. "I should—" he started, but Elena was already moving, not toward Sophia, away from her. She crossed to the window and sank down onto the floor with a soft grunt, her back against the wall. Then she opened her canvas bag and pulled out a ball of yarn and knitting needles. She started knitting, just knitting, humming along with Sophia's tuneless melody, matching the rhythm exactly. Marcus froze in the doorway. Sophia's humming didn't stop, but it didn't escalate either. Her hands slowed slightly. After a long moment, her head turned, just a fraction, toward Elena. The old woman didn't look up, didn't acknowledge her, just kept knitting, kept humming, as if she'd been sitting in that spot her whole life. 3 minutes passed. 5, 10. Sophia stopped rocking, her hands stilled in her lap. She was watching Elena now, head tilted slightly, curiosity flickering across her face for the first time Marcus had seen in months. His throat tightened. He backed out of the room silently and stood in the hallway, pulse racing. Mrs. Chen appeared beside him. "Should I—" "No," Marcus whispered. "Leave them." He went to his office but couldn't work. Opened his laptop 7 times without typing a single word. Finally, he pulled up the security feed for Sophia's room. Cameras in. Every corner installed after a therapist reported bruises, and he'd needed proof they hadn't come from him. On the screen, Elena continued knitting. Sophia watched her, motionless now, almost peaceful. After an hour, Elena stood slowly, placed her knitting back in her bag, and walked to the door. She didn't try to touch Sophia, didn't say goodbye, just left as quietly as she'd arrived. Sophia's gaze followed her all the way out. That night, Marcus reviewed the security footage from every angle. Frame by frame, he watched his daughter, who never watched anyone, track Elena's movements across the room. Watched the tension leave Sophia's shoulders. Watched something that looked almost like contentment settle over her features. It was nothing, probably meaningless. 1 good hour after 3 years of hell, but it was also more than any specialist had ever achieved. He called the agency. "Elena Ruiz," he said. "I want her full-time. Whatever she's asking, double it." "Sir, she's only asking minimum wage. Triple it, and tell her she starts tomorrow at 8 a.m. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Elena arrived the next morning carrying the same canvas bag. Marcus met her at the door. "Thank you for coming back," he said. She nodded. "Where is Sophia?" "Her room, same as yesterday. She doesn't really leave it much anymore." Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Sadness, maybe, or understanding. "Mr. Hartwell," she said gently, "if I'm going to help your daughter, you need to trust me to do things my way." "What way is that?" "Slow, patient, without expectations." She paused. "And you cannot watch us on the cameras." Marcus stiffened. "The cameras are for her safety." "The cameras are for your control," Elena said, not unkindly. "You watch because you're afraid. But your daughter feels that fear. She knows when she's being observed, judged, analyzed. She's spent her whole life being a problem to solve instead of a child to love." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I'm not," he started. "I know you love her," Elena interrupted softly. "But love isn't the same as presence. When was the last time you sat with her? not watching, not trying to fix anything, just sat. Marcus couldn't answer because he couldn't remember. Elena touched his arm briefly. Turn off the cameras during my shifts. Let her have privacy. Let her have space to be herself without performing for experts. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, but he thought about 18 failed caregivers, about Vanessa's car pulling away, about Sophia rocking alone in her room while he worked 16-hour days. Okay, he whispered, but if she gets hurt, then I will call you immediately. Elena's voice was firm. I promise. She walked upstairs, and Marcus stood in the foyer for a long time, before finally going to his office and, hands shaking, disabling the camera feeds in Sophia's room. The first week was torture. Marcus worked from home. An assistant handled his meetings remotely and spent every moment fighting the urge to turn the cameras back on. He listened at Sophia's door twice, heard nothing alarming, humming. The soft click of knitting needles. Occasionally, Elena's voice, quiet and musical, singing something in Spanish. Mrs. Chen reported that Sophia seemed calmer, still nonverbal, still avoided touch, but the screaming fits that used to happen 3 or 4 times a day had stopped completely. On Friday, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He knocked on Sophia's door. Come in, Elena called. He entered. Sophia sat by the window looking out at the ocean. Elena sat on the floor nearby, not beside Sophia, but close enough, knitting something small and colorful. Everything okay? Marcus asked. Very okay, Elena said. She didn't elaborate. Sophia didn't acknowledge him at all. He was invisible to her, as always. He left feeling more alone than ever. But that weekend, something changed. Marcus was in his office Sunday afternoon when he heard music. Real music, not Sophia's humming. He followed the sound to her room and found the door open. Elena sat on the floor, winding up an old music box, the kind with a tiny ballerina that spun on top. It was playing a delicate, tinkling melody, something classical Marcus didn't recognize. Sophia stood 3 feet away, staring at it. Her hands weren't flapping. She wasn't rocking. She was just watching. The music stopped. Elena wound it again. The ballerina spun. Sophia took 1 step closer. Elena wound it a 3rd time, slower now, letting the melody stretch out like honey. Sophia knelt down, her face inches from the music box, eyes wide with wonder. Marcus's vision blurred. He grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. For 8 years he'd thrown money at this problem, hired the best doctors in the world, flew Sophia to clinics in Switzerland, Germany, Japan, bought every therapy device, every sensory tool, every weighted blanket and noise-canceling headphone money could buy. And this 73-year-old housekeeper had reached his daughter with a $20 music box from God knows where. Elena looked up at him, saw the tears on his face, and smiled gently. She didn't say, I told you so, didn't gloat, just wound the music box 1 more time and let the melody fill the room. Sophia reached out, slowly, carefully, and touched the spinning ballerina with 1 finger. She didn't pull away, didn't flinch, just touched it, feeling the movement, and the corners of her mouth turned up in something that almost looked like a smile. Marcus left the room before he broke down completely. That night he sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. He pulled up Vanessa's number, typed and deleted 3 different messages. Finally settled on, she smiled today. Our daughter smiled. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, how? The new caregiver, she's different. Another long pause. Then, can I see her? Marcus stared at the message. Vanessa hadn't asked to visit in 6 months, hadn't called on Sophia's birthday, had told her lawyer she needed complete separation to heal. Saturday, he typed, come for lunch. Okay. He sat back, heart pounding. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe seeing Vanessa would upset Sophia. set back whatever fragile progress Elena had made, but maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to being a family. If an old woman with a music box could create miracles, anything seemed possible. The days that followed felt like watching winter slowly melt into spring. Elena came every morning at 8, carrying her canvas bag and her quiet patience. She never rushed, never pushed, just sat with Sophia in whatever way the girl needed that day. Sometimes they were in the same room, but at opposite ends. Elena knitting while Sophia stared out the window. Other times Sophia would sit closer, watching the old woman's weathered hands work the needles, creating patterns from nothing. The music box appeared every afternoon. Elena would wind it 3 times, let the ballerina spin, then tuck it back into her bag. Sophia began to anticipate it, positioning herself by the window exactly 5 minutes before Elena would reach for the bag. Marcus documented everything in a journal he'd started keeping, small things that specialists would have dismissed. Day 9. Sophia looked toward the door when Elena arrived. First time she's acknowledged someone entering a room. Day 12. Humming changed, now matches the melody of the music box instead of random notes. Day 15. Stood within 2 feet of Elena for 11 minutes. No distress. He showed the journal to Dr. Raines, Sophia's psychiatrist, during their monthly video consultation. "This is remarkable progress, Mr. Hartwell," Dr. Raines said, adjusting his glasses as he read. "What techniques is she using?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "She just sits with her, knits, plays an old music box, nothing clinical." Dr. Raines frowned. "No ABA protocols, no structured behavioral interventions?" "None." The doctor looked skeptical. "Well, proceed with caution. Unstructured approaches can lead to inconsistent results. But document everything. If this continues, we may want to study her methods." Marcus hung up, feeling strangely protective of Elena. The thought of researchers analyzing her, of turning her gentle presence into a protocol, felt wrong somehow. On Thursday of the 3rd week, Marcus came home early from a rare in-person meeting. The house was quiet, too quiet. No humming from upstairs. His heart jumped. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Sophia's door was open. The room was empty. Panic seized him. "Elena," he called, trying to keep his voice steady. "In here, Mr. Hartwell." He followed her voice to the music room, a space that hadn't been used since Vanessa left. She'd played piano, filled the house with Chopin and Debussy, before grief made even beauty unbearable. Marcus stopped in the doorway, his breath catching. Elena sat on the piano bench, and beside her, actually sitting on the same bench, was Sophia. The girl's hands rested in her lap, her eyes fixed on the sheet music propped on the stand. Elena wasn't playing, just pointing at the notes, humming the corresponding pitches softly. "Do you see this one?" Elena murmured, touching a note on the page. "This is the same sound as your music box, the same one the ballerina dances to." Sophia's head tilted, her right hand lifted, trembling, uncertain, and one finger pressed down on a piano key. The note rang out, pure and clear. Sophia gasped, an actual audible gasp of surprise and wonder. Then she pressed it again and again. Each time her eyes grew wider, like she was discovering magic. Elena smiled, patient as ever. She pressed another key, a harmony note. "Try this one." Sophia's finger moved to it immediately, pressed it. The 2 notes together created something beautiful. Marcus's hand flew to his mouth. His daughter, who had never responded to music therapy, who had never shown interest in instruments, who specialists said lacked the neural pathways for musical understanding, was playing piano. Not a song, not even a melody, just 2 notes over and over, but she was choosing them, engaging with them, creating something. Elena looked up and saw him. She didn't stop, didn't break the moment, just gave him a small nod and turned back to Sophia. "Should we try one more?" she asked softly. Sophia's answer was to press both keys simultaneously, creating a chord. Elena laughed, a warm, delighted sound. "Oh, that's lovely. You made something new." And then, so quietly Marcus almost missed it, Sophia hummed, not her usual tuneless drone. She hummed the exact pitch of the chord she'd just played. His knees buckled, he grabbed the doorframe, tears streaming down his face as he watched his daughter, his unreachable, impossible daughter, make music. That night he called Vanessa. "She's playing piano," he said without preamble. Silence. Then, "What?" "Sophia. The caregiver, Elena, she got her to play piano. Just 2 notes at first, but Vanessa, she chose them. She engaged. She created something." "Marcus," Vanessa's voice cracked. Don't give me hope if—" "Come Saturday, see for yourself. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not seeing what I want to see. She's breaking through." Another long silence. "Okay," Vanessa whispered. "Saturday." But Friday morning, everything shattered. Marcus was on a conference call in his office when he heard it. Not screaming. Sophia hadn't screamed in weeks. Something worse. Laughter. His daughter's laughter. He ended the call mid-sentence and ran upstairs. Sophia's door was wide open. Elena sat on the floor, the music box between them, winding it slowly. But this time, when the ballerina spun, Sophia reached out and gently stopped it with her finger. The music cut off abruptly. Elena gasped in exaggerated surprise. "Oh no, the ballerina stopped dancing!" Sophia's face, her beautiful, usually expressionless face, lit up with mischief. She pulled her finger away. The ballerina spun again. The music resumed. Sophia stopped it once more. Elena gasped again, playing along. She stopped again. How does she do that? And Sophia giggled, a real, genuine, joyful sound that Marcus had never heard in 8 years of life. He stood frozen in the doorway as his daughter, his non-verbal, supposedly joy-incapable daughter, played peekaboo with a music box and laughed like a normal child. Elena noticed him and smiled. We discovered a game. Sophia followed Elena's gaze and, for the first time in 3 years, looked directly at her father. Their eyes met, held. She didn't look away, didn't retreat into herself. She saw him, really saw him. Then she did something that made the world stop spinning. She reached for the music box, wound it herself with clumsy but determined fingers, and held it out toward Marcus, offering it to him, inviting him to play. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He dropped to his knees, body shaking with sobs he couldn't control. All the money, all the specialists, all the years of grief and guilt and desperate searching. And this woman, this 73-year-old housekeeper with no degrees, no credentials, nothing but patience and an old music box, had given him his daughter back. Elena quietly stood and touched his shoulder. "I'll give you 2 some time," she whispered. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Marcus crawled forward on his knees until he was sitting beside Sophia. She watched him carefully, the music box still extended. "Can I?" he asked, voice breaking. She placed it in his hands. He wound it with trembling fingers. The ballerina spun, the melody played, and Sophia, his miracle, his impossible girl, reached out and stopped the ballerina with her finger, then looked at him with those luminous eyes and waited for him to gasp in surprise like Elena had. So he did. "Oh no, she stopped dancing." Sophia pulled her finger away, and when the music resumed, she smiled. Not almost smiled. Not maybe smiled. She smiled at him, her father, for the first time in her entire life. And in that moment, Marcus Hartwell, who had built an empire, who had conquered markets and crushed competitors, who had never backed down from a fight, fell completely apart. Because he'd finally won the only battle that mattered. Saturday arrived with pale morning light, and Marcus's stomach twisted in knots. Vanessa was coming. He'd texted her the night before. Come at 10. Sophia's having a good morning. At 9:45, he found Elena in Sophia's room. His daughter sat by the window humming the music box melody while Elena knitted nearby. Vanessa's coming, Marcus said, quietly. Sophia's mother. Elena looked up, understanding in her eyes. That's good. The child needs her mother. I want Vanessa to see what you've done, to see Sophia playing, laughing. Mr. Hartwell, Elena interrupted gently, don't orchestrate it. Let it happen naturally. But Marcus couldn't help himself. When Vanessa's car pulled up at 10:03, he was already opening the front door. She looked thinner, tired. Her blonde hair was shorter, her clothes more casual than he remembered. But her eyes, when they met his, still held the same pain they'd carried the day she left. Where is she? Vanessa asked, not bothering with hello. Upstairs, with Elena. They climbed the stairs in silence. Marcus's heart pounded. He wanted this moment to be perfect. Wanted Vanessa to see their daughter transformed, to realize they could be a family again. He pushed open Sophia's door without knocking. The scene inside was simple. Elena sat on the floor, the music box between her and Sophia, but this time Sophia was winding it herself. Her small fingers turned the key carefully, deliberately, then she released it. The ballerina spun. The melody played. Sophia watched it intently. Then, as the music began to slow, she looked up. She saw Vanessa. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Vanessa stood frozen in the doorway, tears already streaming down her face. Then Sophia did something miraculous. She picked up the music box and walked across the room, toward her mother. She stopped 2 feet away and held it out, offering it. Vanessa's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, hands covering her mouth, body shaking with sobs. Baby, she whispered, oh, my baby. Sophia tilted her head, studying her mother's tears with curiosity rather than fear. Then she took one more step and placed the music box in Vanessa's lap. Vanessa wound it with trembling fingers. The ballerina spun. Sophia reached out and stopped it with her finger. Vanessa gasped through her tears. You stopped her! Sophia pulled her finger away, and when the music resumed, the tiniest smile touched her lips. Marcus watched from the doorway, and instead of joy, something dark and cold spread through his chest. That should have been his moment. He'd paid for everything, the house, the specialists, Elena's salary. He'd stayed when Vanessa left. He'd fought for Sophia every single day. But his daughter had chosen to show the music box to her mother first. The thought was poisonous, irrational, but it took root anyway. After Vanessa left 2 hours later, after she'd spent time sitting near Sophia, watching Elena work, whispering promises to visit every week, Marcus stood alone in his office. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Thank you for letting me see her. Elena is a miracle worker. You were right. He stared at the words. Elena is a miracle worker, not him, not all his money or connections or desperate efforts. Elena. The poison spread. Over the next 3 days, Marcus found himself watching them again. He'd turned the cameras back on, told himself it was for safety, and spent hours reviewing footage. Elena singing Spanish lullabies, Sophia sitting closer each day, the music box ritual becoming more elaborate. Now Sophia would wind it herself, stop it at different moments, wait for Elena's exaggerated reactions. His daughter was blooming, and he was just the man who signed the checks. On Wednesday, he walked into Sophia's room unannounced and found Elena teaching her to braid yarn. Their heads bent together, Elena's weathered hands guiding Sophia's smaller ones. Sophia, Marcus said sharply. Both looked up. Elena smiled. Mr. Hartwell, look, she's learning to— I need to speak with you, he cut in. Downstairs, now. Elena's smile faded. She squeezed Sophia's hand gently, then followed him out. In his office, Marcus didn't sit. He paced, energy crackling through him like electricity. "You're getting too close to her," he said abruptly. Elena blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sophia, she's becoming attached to you, dependent. That's not healthy." "Mr. Hartwell, attachment is part of healing." "You're not a therapist," he snapped. "You're not qualified to make decisions about her psychological development. You're a housekeeper who got lucky with a music box." The words hung between them, ugly and sharp. Elena's expression didn't change, but something shuddered in her eyes. "I see. I think it's time we brought in actual professionals again. People with degrees, people who understand autism." "Your daughter doesn't need more professionals," Elena said quietly. "She needs consistency. She needs someone who won't give up on her." "What she needs," Marcus said coldly, "is structure, not some old woman treating her like a grandchild project." Elena was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. "You're afraid." "I'm not." "You're afraid that she loves me more than you, that I reached her when you couldn't, and instead of being grateful, you're angry." The truth of it hit him like a fist. "Get out. Mr. Hartwell, you're fired. Pack your things and leave." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded, turned, and walked toward the door. "Wait," Marcus called, something desperate clawing at his throat. Don't say goodbye to her. It'll be too confusing." Elena turned back, and for the first time he saw anger flash across her face. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly, "but it's your daughter who will pay for it." She left without going upstairs. Marcus stood alone in his office, heart pounding, waiting to feel relief. It never came. That evening, Sophia wandered the house, looking for Elena. She went to her room every 30 minutes, humming the music box melody, waiting. At bedtime, she stood by her door, staring down the hallway. "Elena had to go home," Marcus said, trying to sound gentle. "But we'll have fun tomorrow, just you and me." Sophia didn't look at him, just walked to her corner and began rocking. By day 3, the regression was undeniable. No more piano, no more smiles. Sophia returned to her corner, hands flapping, humming that tuneless drone Marcus had heard for 8 years. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just rocked and hummed, and occasionally ran to the window, looking for a car that wouldn't come. Mrs. Chen found him on the 4th morning. "Mr. Hartwell, she's hitting her head against the wall again." He ran upstairs and found Sophia in her corner, rhythmically banging her forehead against the plaster. Not hard enough to injure, but steady, mechanical, heartbreaking. "Sophia, stop," he said, trying to pull her away. She screamed, the first scream in a month, and shoved him so hard he stumbled backward. Then she ran to her bed, crawled underneath, and wouldn't come out. Marcus sank to the floor, his back against the wall, and finally understood what he'd done. He'd destroyed the one good thing in his daughter's life, because his ego couldn't handle not being the hero. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called the agency. "Elena Ruiz, I need her address." "Sir, we can't give out personal—" "Please," he whispered, "I fired her. I was wrong. I need to bring her back." A long pause. Then, 1247 Maple Street, apartment 3B. 20 minutes later, Marcus stood outside a small apartment building in a working-class neighborhood 40 minutes from his mansion. He climbed to the 3rd floor and knocked on 3B. Elena opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Mr. Hartwell." "She's dying," he said, words tumbling out. "Not literally, but inside. She's back in her corner, hitting her head, screaming. I destroyed her." Elena's expression softened. "Come in." The apartment was tiny, clean and warm, but tiny. Photos covered every surface. Children, grandchildren, a lifetime of love contained in 600 square feet. "Why did you really fire me?" Elena asked, gesturing for him to sit. Marcus collapsed onto her worn sofa. "Because you could reach her and I couldn't. because she smiled at you first, because—" his voice broke. "Because I wanted to be the one who saved her, and you made me realize I never could." "Oh, Mr. Hartwell," Elena said sadly, "you already saved her. Every time you didn't give up, every time you tried again, every specialist you called, every therapy you funded, that was love. Stubborn, desperate, imperfect love. But she needs you." "She needs both of us," Elena corrected gently. "She needs her father to be present, and she needs someone who understands patience. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." Marcus looked up at her, hope and shame warring in his chest. "Will you come back?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "On one condition." "Anything. You stop hiding in your office. You sit with her, really sit with her, even when it's hard, even when she doesn't respond, even when you feel useless." She held his gaze. "Can you do that?" Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes." "Then I'll come back tomorrow morning. But Mr. Hartwell, if you ever send me away to protect your pride again, I won't return. She can't survive another abandonment." "I promise," he whispered. "I swear to God, I promise." The next morning, when Elena walked through the front door, Sophia was waiting in the foyer. The moment she saw the old woman, she ran. Actually, ran across the marble floor and threw her arms around Elena's legs. Elena knelt down, tears streaming, and held her tight. "I'm here, Majita, I'm here." And then, so softly Marcus almost missed it, Sophia spoke her first word. "Mama." Elena froze. Marcus froze. Sophia pulled back and looked at Elena with those luminous eyes. "Mama," she said again, clearer this time. "Oh, sweet girl," Elena whispered, touching Sophia's cheek. "I'm not Mama, but I love you just the same." Sophia shook her head stubbornly. She pointed at Elena. "Mama." Then she pointed at Marcus. "Dada." And Marcus understood. His daughter was claiming them both, building her own definition of family from the pieces that loved her. He knelt beside them, pulling both into his arms. "Yes," he whispered against Sophia's hair. "We're all here. We're all staying." From the doorway, Mrs. Chen wiped her eyes, and in his pocket, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "How is she?" He looked at his daughter, still holding Elena, humming the music box melody, and typed back, "She's home." If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below and tell us, what was the moment that moved you most? And don't forget to check out our other emotional stories. Your support means everything. See you in the next one.